Hey friends, I'm Albert Myers, and this is The Creative Side, the show that celebrates and explores the talent of the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. On today's show, we have Raycurt Johnson. Also known as the Fiddler, Raycurt plays violin, viola, cello. He teaches voice and piano. He's also a busker around the DC area. I've known Raycurt for about 10 years, and I'm very happy to have him on today's show. Here to perform a medley of classical music is Raycurt Johnson. Thanks for joining us today on this episode of The Creative Side. I'm so happy to have as my guest my longtime friend, musician extraordinaire, violinist, cello, viola, voice, Raycurt Johnson. Thanks for being on the show, Raycurt.
Thank you. Very great pleasure to be here.
So Raycurt, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started with music, and when did that journey begin for you?
Okay, just a little bit, but it's a
Yeah,
whole
sure.
lot.
Sure.
Well, I was raised here in Washington, D.C., growing up with my mom and my brother, and my mother and grandmother would take us to church, Vermont Avenue Baptist Church. So I'm one of those church musicians raised, in children's choirs and things like that. Um, that background. And then eventually, she sent us to a military school in the 60s, and that was the thing to do just for a little discipline. And then being in the military school where they had Catholic nuns teaching the education. And what was it that one day I was learning, and then I was misbehaving in the classroom, and so she put me in the detention room, which had a piano. So I did everything in my power to keep going to detention so I could go on the piano.
Wow, no kidding.
so,
And then
yeah.
eventually you ended up, I know that you were a graduate of I found out recently that you were one of the first classes of the Duke Ellington School of Music in Washington D.C. And so tell me a little bit about that experience there. How did that kind of shape your musical direction?
Yes, upon continuation of singing, and I was a member of the DC Youth Chorale, a singing group in Washington D.C. of teenagers at that time, and so when the decision to open up the Duke Ellington School, they gave us an open invitation to audition and become probably the first class of people to open or to attend the school. So I was within the first year of that year, the opening of Duke Ellington Performing Arts, and where actually upon the audition I was accepted for theater and dance. So you had a choice, but they required you to take all of those things. It was an art school, and those were great days and very talented. Wow, very talented people in those days that I grew up with. So I went there for a couple years, and then eventually graduating from Bethesda Chevy Chase High School, continuing and learning viola, which I learned the viola, and then eventually performing in New York City, and then I was given a violin, and so I've just been playing all this music just for, I don't know, just by
A
inspiration.
long time. I know you've been doing it a long time. So Ray, the viola, tell me a little bit about those that might be unfamiliar with the instrument. I know most people know violin, they know cello, but tell me
Yes.
about what's unique about the viola, or how would you describe the viola?
Well, the concept is the same. Just like you have a choir, you have the sopranos, the altos, the tenors, the bass, and so the viola is the alto. And then it's a little larger and longer, and it has such a beautiful sound, and its purpose is controlling the inner harmonies. And so I really loved it because of the timbre of the texture of the sound, and then also singing in choirs, the purpose of harmonies and contrapuntal. So I found it very interesting, and I really loved it.
So
And
it fits in the range between I guess between bass and then the higher instruments. Like violin would be the soprano in that analogy, and then the viola would
yeah,
be like under that. Okay, all
it's
right.
the
It,
alto, the 2nd.
Very nice. So Ray, you've obviously traveled a lot as well and played. I know that you've gone overseas. I know a big part of your sort of the musical background is the Chevalier. Can you tell us a little bit about Chevalier and maybe that influence? Who was Chevalier?
Right. Chevalier de Saint George was a violinist. He was the son of a French lieutenant that was stationed in the islands, Guadeloupe, I believe, and the French armed lieutenant eventually brought him to France and raised him in France among the elites. And he was a composer and a fenceman, and wow, just a very uh, interesting person to grow up as a mulatto in that culture. And then he had the best of teachers, and he excelled at everything that he did. And he composed, and the orchestra that he was participating in at that time was actually the orchestra that 14-year-old Mozart heard when Mozart visited Paris.
Wow.
So yeah, so he actually was an influence to Mozart indirectly. So and yeah, and it's very important to get that musical history, that part of history. And there are a lot of other musicians nowadays that hone in on that history, and there are festivals of him.
Mm.
And then it's sort of in my work also, I have delved in the history of George Bridgetower, who was a mulatto in Germany, and his mother was of Polish descent. And he was a friend of Beethoven. And when actually Beethoven's Kreutzer Sonata was actually first dedicated to him. So it's been a purpose of mine to while the music itself is worthy to play and explore, but just with that history in itself, and I find myself making history too.
Yeah, fitting into that lineage. Yeah, absolutely. So Ray, tell me a little bit about the songs that you're playing for the show. I know that you did kind of, as you're describing, an Americana medley and then another tune. So just tell us about those songs and maybe a little bit around them and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny. As discovering as a busker, you play a lot of music that well, you play what you know. And then I also, being a classical music, I really I don't say classical musician because I really play what I like. And I do like Bach, and I love Bach, and I love Beethoven, I love all that music, Count Basie and Bob Marley, and it's all music and it's all melodies. So I play it. So if I'm traveling in Las Vegas and I got to busk and make some money, okay, so I'll play some interesting country fiddle tunes that in the middle of Nevada, and people go, "Wow!"
Right.
And so that's what I did, is I improvised like this little country thing, and then put in, "Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam and the deer and the antelope play."
So you kind of tailor what you're playing to like where you're playing, and you also mentioned busking. So explain. I mean, people kind of know what busking is, but I think they've never heard that term before. And so busking is playing on the street, and so where did that term kind of come from?
Yeah, but it's an English term from England, and that's what they call themselves, street performers. And then there are troubadours, which is the Italian term, street musicians and vocalists and everything. And that's what I used to call our little group in Washington, D.C., Capital Area Troubadour Society.
Very nice.
That was a while ago. Remember that?
Yeah. I do.
Right.
That's great. And so.
And so that's, yeah, the busking and just the spirit of impromptu serenade, and celebrating the music. Yeah, occasions, weddings, bar mitzvahs, divorces.
The sad song for the divorce. Yeah, absolutely. That's
you got to make it happy so they know, so that everyone's happy, and the friends are
right. Exactly.
amicable.
Well, Ray, so where can people find more about you, the music that you make and the lessons and all that kind of stuff? What's the best place to reach you? Website, Instagram, all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, it's working there. The website has been there. And trying to find a platform that's not too expensive. But I found myself on SoundCloud that is just easy accessible for people. And eventually there will be a platform where you can market yourself, and yeah, because it's if you're not signed and a record deal and everything like that, But I love the independence of that because, it's free flowing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for taking the time and talking to me and performing for us. And so now we're gonna see another performance, that Americana medley that I mentioned before. But thank you again for being on the show, Ray.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. All right, Albert.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Creative Side, and special thanks to my guest, Raycurt Johnson. And if you or anyone you know has the urge to express your creativity and inspire others to do the same, connect with MMC TV, and maybe you can be the next guest on The Creative Side.